We've had a real good time up here so far. Once again, this is the 55th annual AEA Convention and Trade Show where the really cool stuff happens. We've talked a lot about general aviation, a bit about the business aviation market, but when you start talking about the high end of aviation, it's hard to have any conversation and not bring up one company in particular, Universal Avionics. We're fortunate to have Dan Reida with us, the VP of Sales, Marketing, and Product Support for Universal. And before we get into some discussions we want to talk about about the high end of the market, I got to tell you, the Universal support behind Wounded Warrior, and the sponsorship of Colonel Tillman's speech this morning and so forth. Well, I like you guys. That was very, very cool stuff. And Wounded Warrior is near and dear and close to my heart. So we thank you much for that. How did that relationship come about?
Well, it was pretty interesting, and thank you for that, Jim, by the way. That's actually the first time that I've seen Colonel Tillman's full presentation, and it was riveting. So, but after he left the Air Force, Mark went to work for Discount Tire. He made some jokes about Discount Tire during the presentation, and he was serious. He flies for their works for their flight department, flies a Challenger for them, I believe. But they also have some equipment, some airframes with our equipment on them. So through one of our salesmen and coordinating with our marketing people, we were able to make the connection. He was interested in doing this, and he had the condition that he would do it as long as it benefited Wounded Warriors.
Outstanding. So. I'll tell you what, the speech was great. I've heard several times today since this morning, when can I see that again? So, and as somebody who's spent a fair amount of time in aviation, all I could think of was listening to this guy is, why didn't I ever fly with captains like that? Right. I mean, the guys in my left seats were just ready to eat me up for lunch and spit me out for dinner. It was just not a good time. He sounds like he would have been just a marvelous guy to fly with. I mean, it was obvious he was a consummate aviator, but it also looked like this was a guy who would have been a lot of fun to fly with. Yeah,
he's very personable and a very modest gentleman. So,
well, Dan, let's get down to business. Universal, serious player. I mean, let's face it, you can't be looking at the high end of the market and not see Universal in one form or another. Where does let's synopsize, if you will, Universal's place in the industry right now?
All right. As far as the market segment, we pretty much cover the gamut. A quick definition would be we are on everything from single-engine turboprops up to and including 747-200s like Colonel Tillman was flying. We're across the transport market. We have military customer base. Our largest customer base is the business jet market, and then down into some of the higher-end Part 23 aircraft, particularly owner-flown aircraft. A wide range of products going in there. Our core product is flight management systems. We have flight deck instruments. We can give you a complete retrofit. We do crash recorders, the old black box that's bright orange, and data link, charting products. So, and we continue to expand our product line.
Outstanding. Well, one of the topics we've been discussing throughout the day was the way synthetic vision has changed the face of various segments of aviation. And obviously in your market, synthetic vision is not only something that's become a much desired commodity from an operator standpoint, but it's a whole different ball game than what we're seeing right now in basic general aviation, piston singles and twins and light turbine. How do you approach the synthetic vision market for high-end airplanes?
Well, as far as from the customer perspective,
well, customer and regulatory, because it's a whole different sequence.
All right, to discuss the regulatory route, we blazed the trail there. There were synthetic vision systems in experimental and Part 23 aircraft. Then in 2001, we came out with our product, and we were the first to go into the Part 25 market, and it was definitely had its bumps along the road. In order to take a product like that into the Part 25 market, you have to address more stringent certification requirements. There has to be a higher level, criticality level software involved in the system to ensure that hazardly misleading data is not displayed. The product that we took to the FAA initially had a lot more features than the product that got to market, but because it was leading edge technology, that there was reluctance on the FAA's part to make such a big leap. So we actually took features out of the product.
Oh my.
Which was disappointing for us. It could have been even better than it was. It was still revolutionary. So we had to consider not just the synthetic vision itself, but the whole package. So we had to take into account the display of synthetic vision. In order to meet the requirements, there's actually a handshake that synthetic vision goes out to the display, says, verify that what I'm telling you to display, you are displaying, and it sends that information back to the synthetic vision computer. So if that handshake is broken, we have to immediately remove the display. Okay. And that's the kind of integrity monitoring that has to take place once you get into the Part 25 market.
Fascinating. What is it that your customers are looking for, though? What is the true difference between the synthetic vision that we're seeing right now in general aviation and Part 25 and associated markets? What kind of technologies are being brought to the fore here, and why is there such a gap?
Again, there's reluctance from the certification authorities to leap into a new technology, and everything has to be...
So it sounds like it requires real leaders in the field, and obviously this is a role for you to play.
In order to get the original product certified, Part 25, you go deal with the Transport Directorate. Right. They go out to their experts in the FAA. We flew dozens of FAA folks on our aircraft to evaluate our display of synthetic vision to get it approved. We had to go around the country and hook up with all of these different subject matter experts so they could evaluate the system. In a Part 23 world, you don't have that rigor you have to go through.
Outstanding. Interesting. I'll be darned. So, all things considered then, what is it that Universal is going to try to do with this technology in the future, and what do we have to do to close the regulatory gap to be able to field all the things that you'd like to be able to bring to this process?
Well, one of the things, probably the biggest thing that would help is I think we all know, the pilot community knows, there are safety enhancements in this technology.
Oh, no question.
We have to get the message across that by hindering the implementation of this technology, it's hurting safety. Things can always go wrong with a given technology, but you have to weigh that against how much it would help if it were put into use. And synthetic vision is a good example. I mean, the situational awareness that it adds is incredible, but there's risk involved, and you have to accept some of those risks in order to take advantage of the technology.
Now, how much integration are you doing right now with synthetic vision with alternate but associated technologies like EVS, or for that matter, being able to transition synthetic vision from a screen to a HUD or to other devices in the future? Are you looking into that?
We've had discussions with several other companies, even some of our competitors, on evaluating the fusing of EVS and SVS, presenting that on a HUD, presenting just SVS on a HUD. There's a lot of benefit even still to heads down. So we're looking at all those technologies. Again, there's obviously certification hurdles, and it takes time to overcome those hurdles.
I'll be darned. Well, Dan, we've appreciated the opportunity to get a little bit of an idea about the differences from a standpoint of what we've been talking about all day with general aviation and light business aviation, and now what we're trying to do, of course, in order to look at the higher end and take all these technologies and allow them to do more, be better, and obviously in your case also for the regulatory folks to be able to digest, work with, and support your efforts.
Embrace technology.
There we go. Well, that's probably the best way to put it under the circumstances. Dan, we sure appreciate your time. We're going to take a short break here at the 55th Annual AEA Trade Show and Convention here at the Gaylord at National Harbor, Maryland, just across the river from Washington, D.C. For Aero-News and Aero-TV, we'll see you back here in just a few moments.
Aero-TV's live coverage of the 55th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.